We're live. Hold on. I got to check. I got to go on Twitter, right? And now I got to go to my profile because I don't trust technology. I don't. And the day that I trust technology is the day they're going to get me. It is. It is. Okay. And my cats are going crazy. So I just retweeted. I see we're live. Now I'm going to go back to you. And I see you, and we are live. That is awesome. So, and now I'm going to turn down my music, right? Because I like my music. It keeps me calm.
It's good music.
It is. Okay, then I'll listen to one more. Listen to that. It's really good. I hope everybody's enjoying my music. We're going to keep it on for about another 5 seconds so we can all be really, really calm. I see everybody's joining us. So thank you so much, Rising Serpent. And you are awesome. And Rising Serpent and I speak quite frequently offline. And I see a bunch of people here. And we all speak offline. So it's just wonderful to be joined by everybody. Now I turn down my music. And thank you so much for joining me. I thought this would be a lot of fun. We're going to take a couple of questions, right? Because I never get to talk anymore. And you get to talk a lot, right? You do. You talk a lot. You're a tweeting animal. So I see Chuck is here. He says he's been listening to Nina Rao daily, and hopefully everybody had a chance to see what I call the investor series. It was like 2 weeks ago, and we did the Hahnemann Chalizo. We talked about meditation, and we talked about investing in ourselves, especially in these. Everybody's got so much anxiety, and it's so easy to forget to invest in ourselves. And if we're not investing in ourselves, then we can't invest in the stock market, right? Because you got to believe that there's a tomorrow, and you got to have some happiness to know that tomorrow you're going to be happy, right? So I see Ken is here, and Ken, Thursday night fun time. It is Thursday night. This would be my my Care 10 night. I think a couple of people know that, but this is the night that I would usually do my Care 10. And one of the things I enjoy about Periscope is we get to regain some intimacy. Right, because we all miss people, and I guess this Thanksgiving we're going to be missing a lot of people, right? Even though I'm kind of a resistance, I have a small family, so even being the resistance, I couldn't find 10 people to stuff into a room right now. Yeah. So I want to say hello to everybody, and first, Joseph, would you be kind enough to introduce yourself?
Well, first and foremost, let's say thank you for having me on, Adam. Very cool to be here. But I'm Joseph Cotto. I am the co-host of the current events program, Cotto Gottfried, which you can find on YouTube, among other platforms. But I think it's easiest to find on YouTube. Just type in Cotto, C-O-T-T-O, Gottfried, G-O-T-T-F-R-I-E-D. That's my co-host, Paul Gottfried. And it should come right up on YouTube. And I think people find it to be an interesting show. We cover a lot of topics. I enjoy it, obviously. So does Paul. And be sure to subscribe to us. We always are on the lookout for new YouTube subscribers. I mean, to go even farther back, which I'm not really going to do, I was a columnist in Washington Times' communities page. I was a syndicated newspaper columnist. So I did quite a few things before Cotto Gottfried started up. I was the chief editor of the San Francisco Review of Books. So that is who I am. Oh, I'm also a knight and a nobleman. It's not a joke, but I very rarely bring that up, but it just seems random enough to discuss here. So that is me in a nutshell. And my favorite ice cream flavor, it's kind of hard to say. There's this kind of rum flavor that I do like, but depends on my mood. Strawberry is good. I like strawberry.
Gotcha. And I'm a fan of your show. I watch it frequently, right? And I'm a fan of Paul Gottfried because he's a conservative and I'm a liberal. So we get to argue sometimes. And I think last time I was on your show, we were on for 2 hours. I think I won that battle. And that's sad. It's sad because my theory at that time was that the elites had not spent 4 years trying to displace an insurgent just to allow Mary and Joe from Eagles Point, Pennsylvania, to thwart the plans of the elites, right? I didn't think it, and I still, sadly don't think it. I would like to see some interrogation of the ballots, right? I think that's important. Just, I'd hate to see our democracy, the fidelity of our democracy compromised for the convenience of a tyranny, right? I think that's kind of dangerous. So people have questions. And I would love to see people's questions. And one of the things I have to address first is I see that somebody's got a sales meeting coming up. And I do a lot of periscopes about sales because it's so important to me. So John is here. John Brown Flake, and what a wonderful picture that is. What a beautiful couple. And John Brown Flake says he has a sales meeting later. Glad to catch this beforehand. Sales is important, man. Get your head together, man. Just be better than everybody else. Just be better than everybody else, man. Just get it done and make yourself proud, man. Get that deal closed. It's important. And if you're not going to get the deal closed now, just make sure that you're progressing to get the deal closed and that you take charge of it. So Jeffrey Hicks is here, and thank you so much for being here, Jeffrey. And Jeffrey says he's been following Cotto the last month. Great stuff. It is. Cotto, Joseph and I had a conversation 2 months ago where I showed you a little bit of the log that I keep of COVID. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we discussed a lot of things, but that was part of it.
What do you think of that log? I showed you. You're person 5, right? So you're one of 5 people who have seen my log, and ultimately there can only be one, right? So I'm going to let you guys pick the Highlander of my log. But I showed you the timelines, right? I showed you a good part of the timeline I was working on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you did, and it was a fascinating. I was going to say endeavor, but it's more like an experience because it's something that has to be seen to be believed. I'm trying to think of the words to use to describe it in further detail, but it is something that defies any sort of conventional description. And it's something that people need time to look at, and it does map things out very, very well.
Yeah, this is the fastest roll up of power in history, and it's really just a wonderful thing to watch. Sad, I suppose, but we're seeing a transformation of our people operating system. So when I was on your show, Paul Gottfried wrote the classic After Liberalism. He wrote a lot of incredible books. That's actually my favorite because it's more like layman, right? It's not that academic, and what I think Paul had difficulty reconciling within himself is that this is what's after liberalism. It's not the Constitution. He hoped the Constitution would just mutate into something else, but that it would stay, right? It would stay solvent, and clearly that's not happening. So that was part of my thesis for why I expected Trump to lose. I expected there to be shenanigans, and I expected there to be moral corruption that would permit shenanigans to be applauded, which is a crazy thing. I expect there to be for Biden to be the FDR 2.0, and just some things that people might not like. But all we can do is sit back and kind of observe it, and hopefully a lot of people are protesting it. So I see Tim is here, and I want to take people's questions. So you got a lot of questions for me. You got a lot of questions for Joseph. So thank you so much for being here, Tim, and hi to you as well. And Chuck is here. Chuck is here, and Chuck is brilliant. Namaste, Chuck. So thank you very, very much. So I'm going to scroll down, but as I do, and I really want to look for questions, is you're still, Joseph, of the belief that Trump can pull this out. I think that's very reasonable, provided he can get the ground support needed. So, what's your thought on his kind of reclaiming the presidency?
Well, I said from the beginning, and I kind of have to preface this. There were a lot of people who said that Trump would win in a landslide, as Adam and I both know. And I never thought Trump would win in a landslide. I thought he'd win a fairly decent electoral college victory, which he would have won exactly, if not for the states that have a lot of shenanigans, to say the least. But obviously, I underestimated the fraud. Now, looking at the situation he's in, I think that if he does not concede, what he can wind up doing is denying Biden 270 in terms of what the Electoral College will be willing to recognize. And at that point, it wind up going to the U.S. House. Now, I did get inside information from his inner circle about his plan. And what I said was going to be his plan from the beginning, after it became apparent that this fraud was throwing various states off that he needed to win, that he won last time, as a matter of fact. I said he would try to win this in the Electoral College by stalling the state certification of results. It's exactly what he's doing. And he would try to get a win in the Electoral College by getting legislatures to act in his favor, because there are Republican legislatures in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and in Arizona. And if he gets all of those, obviously he'd win. But I don't think he has a chance of getting all those states in any case. But even though the governor of Arizona is very, very compliant with it, I think that what the Trump campaign's strategy is, the Trump administration strategy really is, as I learned, is that they're going to stall, which they have already done, and they're going to try to get this done without the House, if possible. They get the state legislatures to comply sufficiently. In that case, he would be north of 270. But the fallback is taking it to the U.S. House. Now, I got that inside information last week or the week before. Now, I actually forget. So I think that where the situation is at now is that his best strategy is to prevent Biden from getting to 270. And Alan Dershowitz wrote about that over the weekend. And it's a very sound strategy. It requires a lot of work. It's not easy. It's not like a cakewalk, but it is doable. What is most necessary is that he has an iron will not to concede, and that he doesn't listen to naysayers around him in doing that. And he's talking with the leaders of the Michigan legislature tomorrow. So quite clearly, he's not just doing that because he's inviting them over for afternoon tea. So I think he is going to do his level best to score an electoral college win. Now, there is something else here that's not been discussed much by anyone. And it's whether or not electors from certain states are bound legally to vote in the way that their state votes. Some states have laws to that effect, some don't. I don't know the statutes in each state, obviously, but it is possible, I suppose, that the Trump camp might try to convince certain electors to be faithless, as they would be called then. That would be an extreme last resort, but I don't think they'll necessarily get there. I think they're going to stall this thing, which they've been doing. That's why they file so many lawsuits. Even after one gets thrown out, a whole bunch more come in, and tomorrow there are more coming in Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania. The beat rolls on. And Michigan, they withdrew a lawsuit today, and people were sort of going apeshit over that. People who support Trump and people who don't were very happy. But then Trump said, no, it's because I don't need it anymore because of the situation with the canvassing board in Wayne County. Now, that is interesting because a lot of people don't know a canvassing board from a canvas on which you paint a portrait. But the canvassing board determines that the votes cast in any given election were accurate and that they deserve to be certified. And obviously in Wayne County, which is where Detroit is, it's a split canvassing board between two parties, even though it's an overwhelmingly Democratic county. It has to be by law split between the parties in Michigan. And the canvassing board there said, we're not going to certify this. The two Republicans on the board. And so they didn't certify it. But then they were strong-armed into certifying it. And then they came out and said, we're revoking our certification.
Can I stop you? Because it's so wonderful, and I really appreciate the kind of catching up to where we are now. But we are where we are now, right? So I want to make sure I see people's questions because I'm so interested. And sometimes people see me ranting on Twitter, and I've been doing that a lot lately as I've been continuing my log. And there's a lot of palace intrigue right now, and there's a lot of intricacies, and I think complexity works against Trump, which is unfortunate because I'd like to see votes counted with the signatures, but I think complexity and time work against him. So I want to make sure I say hello to people, and I also want to make sure as I scroll down I can see questions, right? So No Worries 2020, who's my second favorite salesperson in the world, says this is a nice surprise pre-Thanksgiving family gathering. So yes, thank you very much. And then somebody up here says Cytochrome P450. And I think I recognize that image. So says calm. We can't be calm with looming lockdowns. We have to be calm because the only thing we really have left, we have no retreat anymore, right? You can't retreat to the sports. You can't retreat to TV. You can't even retreat to books anymore. And to contemporary books. And very soon you're not going to be able to retreat to historical books as they all get kind of rewritten on the fly in a digital world, which is going to be really interesting. And I think that's going to happen much quicker than people think. So you've got to be calm, because the only place you can retreat to that is still yours is your own body and your own mind. So no, you need to retreat, and it's a horrible thing. But until they're able to intrude into our being, you've got to you've got to you've got to try and participate in yourself, right? So Flash 1340 says Bezos should be Great Reset. I've said that also. I'm not sure if you got that from me, but that makes two of us now. You're right. I agree. And here's my favorite recent military graduate. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit because I want to see people's questions, because I'm so interested and I've got so much to say. And Joseph has so much to say and he's brilliant.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
you really are. You're so ahead of your years. So Kane Ness said, and good to see you here. He said just subscribed. So thank you very much. And Jedi Mac said, I was introduced to Adam Scrabble. Yeah, their site is really great, very conservative. They have some really good guests. Even going back into their archives, they've had Cernovich. They've just had so many interesting people. And conservatives don't really have a good outlet anymore, right? They really don't. So it's good to see long form interviews. So John Brandflake says, thank you. I've read your Salesforce. So here's an interesting question. So I'm glad we got here. And I know that Rising Serpent is going to have some questions, because I really enjoy the time that we spend offline. So DP West says, how does the average person fight for the Republic? And it's a very interesting question. And Joe, I'm going to ask it to you first, and then I'll respond. Is that all right?
Sure, no problem. I really don't care about the Republic, to be honest with you. I think the United States, it certainly is a country that exists on paper, and it is a geopolitical entity with many competing quasi-countries inside of it. John Zogby, the pollster, one of the few accurate ones, wrote a very good book called Neo-Tribes and Neo-Tribal Analytics. I might have jumbled the title. And it details how modern social affinity groups have produced a tribalism in America that makes it so the country is quite fractured, and he explains the ramifications of that. So if you look at the Republic as an entity, if you call it a republic, looking at it as a monolithic entity, even if you admit there's diversity of thought within it, and diversity of lifestyles, ancestries, blah blah blah, cultures, trying to save the republic per se, I don't think is a smart idea, because the future is going to be much more decentralized. I think regionalism is the future. And what I expect to see happen is massive corporate investment in certain areas, in which case they virtually buy out certain areas. It's a long, drawn out thing, but I think Adam's basically on the same page with this. So I think that really the future is not going to be looking at the republic. It's going to be looking at your city, your county, your state, even. And even that might be a little dicey. So I think that the republic is very much an outdated thing. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have supported the American Revolution. I'm not from Florida, we remain loyal to the crown, but I'm not saying that with disdain for American history. I'm not a 1619 guy. That's where I'm coming from. That's what I just want to convey. But so I think the average person should be interested in fighting for his own or her own quality of life, and he or she should try to make his or her community and region as safe, stable, prosperous, and desirable to live in as possible. That would be my advice.
So, okay, so now, and I appreciate that so much. So thank you very much. And now I'll respond to that, because it's such an interesting question. And my response is different than Joe's, right? So I see the transformation in our people operating system, and this is something I've been watching for years. So now we're just seeing that they use Trump. They use Trump, and they pose themselves as the resistance. So they use the language. The elites use the language of egalitarian, and they've used all this language to kind of roll up power. And so when you say how does the average person fight for the republic, I think there's a few things going on. I think that's first a question of is defining the republic within what it was and now what it's going to be, right? So I think one of the difficulties that people are having now is we see the transformation in our people operating system, but we're seeing so many intra-America squabbles that people don't have the opportunity to mediate what the republic will look like going forward. If there is a republic, we are not being the intra-America squabbles are distracting people from being able to mediate a surrender to the elites. So we're not able to get to a compromise One of them would, for example, being how much AI can be utilized and how it can be utilized, how much robotics can be utilized, passing real rigid laws about it. So now let me go backwards to another part of your question. So when you're saying a republic, are you referring to kind of the rules that dictated, you know, the how people got along, you know, how businesses operated? So because I think a lot of people are used to a system where we're seeing so much chaos right now, which is deliberate, because when there's chaos, there's only the government can be the arbiter of it. So perhaps what you're then asking is not the republic the way it was, because I don't think that that's reconcilable. I think it's gone irrevocably. I think the death knell was when the conservatives collectively became lockdown COVID people without any type of interlocutory, without any type of prosecution or questions. I think they just accepted it. So I was very disappointed in that. I think that was it, right? So it's such an interesting question. So how does the average person fight the republic? I really like what Ali is doing right now. You know, Ali Alexander, I really like what he's doing right now. It's a shame to see conservatives kind of turning against him because they're finding these little eccentricities that really don't really matter too much, right? And it's a shame to see what is left of the conservatives who have an appreciation for a constitutional republic squabbling as well amongst themselves and kind of shoving each other out of the way. And Paul can, I'm looking forward to when we do a longer Periscope, because Paul's going to discuss his experience. Paul's an academic. He's a genius, and he was shoved out of the way by the conservatives. And I'm going to be doing one with Chris Hedges soon. And Chris Hedges was shoved out of the way by the liberals. So we've got some real problems going on. So hopefully that's somewhat responsive to it. So Whitler Barbara, thank you so much for being here. And she says the connection keeps getting lost. That's true. And that is the wonderful part about Periscope is that does happen. And that's just part of the intimacy of the experience, right? So I think of this as a dinner with friends, and I guess they're playing a prank on you, right? So I guess when you went to the restroom, you came back and the place was empty and they're all hiding behind the so please just reconnect. So Bike Spoke, thank you for being here, says Rage Against the Machine. Yeah, I'm seeing rage oriented into the wrong place. I like the Trump movement. I think that they should continue the fight. I really appreciate what Ali is doing. And there's some other people as well, and it's amazing watching them take all this online energy and mobilize it, right? Because the internet is now designed as a demobilizing agent. So it's remarkable to see him take this apparatus that's been designed to fragment and not allow consensus to form, oppositional consensus to form, and then take that and being able to kind of with the force of his own personality to be able to mobilize people into a physical convening. I think it's great. So George, and I want you to be responsive to this also, says, and thank you so much for being here, George Purcell, says, assume that we are seeing elites in conflict right now. Which elites are going to lose? Joseph, what do you think?
That's hard to say because it's rather specific. I think that the elites of technology, mass information technology, are best positioned to win, obviously, in the long run. Although I do question whether or not their victory would be tenable as time rolls on. I mean, that's really getting, I think, very theoretical. But I do think that elites or so-called elites who are based in more traditional industries are more well positioned to lose than those who have their wealth, their social status, their prestige, generally speaking, rooted in more late blooming industries like anything from social media to artificial intelligence. So that's my take there. But I think if you look at it from another perspective, there are certain elites, if you will, who like nation states, who like borders, because they see these things as providing a good framework of control that they can operate in and find success in. And then you have others who are very much opposed to these nation states and borders. These would be more the people who are in favor of, say, the EU as opposed to Brexit. And they find that for their own interests, it's better to have as loose of a scenario as possible because they think they'll essentially be able to make a profit or gain political power off of the resultant madness. If you look at the so-called elites who supported Brexit in the UK and those who opposed it, it's really a good approximation of what's going on here in the US right now.
Okay, it's very interesting, and I'm going to be responsive to that as well. So, so again, George says, so assume we are seeing elites in conflict right now. Which elites are going to lose? I think right now there's just they've agreed to take all the plebs out first, and then once they get to dry land, I think they've reached an agreement that they'll start battling it out then. But right now, and that battle is going to be really ugly. That battle is going to be truly, truly ugly. But I think right now they're just trying to kind of go through their own kind of discrimination process where they're foreclosing the opportunity for opposition to occur, right? Because they're taking away people's social, economic, and political capital, right? So they're making sure that resistance cannot occur in force. And then they're using Antifa as a way of kind of coercing what Chuck, who's here with us, and thank you so much. And I'll bring him up later so people can follow him. And John Robb they have their own logic of explaining it and their own rules for explaining it, but it's very tribal. So I think the elites have their own tribe. And at the end of the day, the danger is that I suspect that the winners are the most nihilistic of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the winners are maybe the more whatever the opposite of Socrates is, right?
Aristotle? No, that would be
Gorgias. Was that his name? Whoever was the evil Socrates. That's who I think wins, because I think that these people, the elites of today, are much different than the elites we had with George Soros, Paul Singer, Koch, because those people, at the end of the day, were used to working in an environment that had tens of thousands of employees that they had somewhat regular interaction with. And the elites of today have this type of genius that's very Asperger's, which is a very mathematical type of intelligence, which is remarkable. And I know several of them, and I know a lot of people with it. So it's not in any way a criticism, but I think it does have its own kind of social. It does have some social issues that can accompany it. And one of them is a difficulty to have empathy and to relate to others. So I think at the end of the day, the elites, the tech elites will win out in the end. And the problem is that the tech elites, the tech elites are unlike the other elites. The tech elites look at this as they look at humanity as a flawed business model.
Yes.
And they're eager to do a lot of layoffs of humanity. And I think that's one of the things that people unfortunately are not mediating is if they had the opportunity to, if they had a way of cleaning up the mess, I think they would extinguish 9/10 of the population. But again, people are not mediating that, and that's a shame. So I think the elites ultimately that are going to win is going to be the Google, it's going to be the Facebook, because they've got all the surveillance information. They've got the repository of information. So I think people really have to negotiate, just as they did in days of the fiefdoms, and they did in. And I wanted to speak to Paul about it, because Paul is an authority on kind of the German post-Enlightenment. But there was a lot of agreements that were new at that time about what academics would look like, what education would look like, and we're not getting to that place right now. So the plebs, so to speak, don't have an agreement with the rulers about how we can all coexist, and that's creating more of a problem, because people are becoming unrulable, and that's so. John Brand Flake, and I'm an investor, so thank you so much for this question. He says, what companies will benefit most from a Biden administration? Hopefully, John, you watch, and everybody here watches my investor series, right? Because at the end of the day, whoever wins, Trump or Biden, we all, whatever the future is, we all have to make sure we don't suffer it. So we're all looking for sector rotations. If Biden wins, what's that going to look like for India, for fossil fuels, for precious minerals, for metals? What sectors are going to benefit from that? Should we be buying education stocks? What should we be buying? With Obamacare, we bought United Healthcare, right? So when Facebook was going through all of the stuff with Cambridge Analytica, I bought Facebook stock because I saw that they were going to have a chance to suck up all that revenue that before they were giving out to developers and giving out to third-party companies. So, no matter what, the world is being cartelized. So if we know the world is being defragmented, right, we buy the defragmenters and we buy the cartels. Here's a great question. So what a wonderful picture. So and I think I recognize the picture from your Twitter profile. So thank you so much for being here, Joseph. Let's. What do you think? How quickly does the book burning start?
Well, I think it's already started. In both literally, I've seen some people burning things they dislike. Also figuratively, because people are getting canceled, which is much more important. I think that in time, people will try to. They already are deplatforming websites, but it started out with neo-Nazi types, all these people who nobody wants to be around to begin with. But now I think it's moving the social justice warriors toward deplatforming sources of information that they just dislike. On not any kind of moral ground, but an ideological one. Although they conflate ideology with morality, so you have to consider that. But I think that the book burning, even if it's not literal book burning, the deplatforming of information that runs counter to the prevailing SJW narrative, the woke narrative, I think it will intensify during the years to come. There will be efforts to get payment processors to stop operating for certain websites. There will be an effort to get certain websites to kick some people off. There will be an effort to get web hosting services to stop hosting certain websites. And it'll be just because these people don't like what's being posted there. So I think that it's already started, and I think it will accelerate. I don't know how far it will go, though, because there is always going to be somewhere in the world where there will be a web hosting service, where there will be a payment processor, even if on some island in Oceania, that will cater to people who want to say what they want to say. So I think that that's where this is going. The question is, how many people would be willing to sort of relocate to these, much less well-known entities, and how many people would be willing to accept the fact that the old days are not going to be with us anymore, where you had a really pro-free speech environment, or at least relatively so, among large websites, and there wasn't the expectation that anybody would try to platform someone just to disagree with their views.
I'm gonna take my crack at that. Okay. And their question again was, how quickly does the book burning start? And I say extremely quickly. You're not going to be prepared for how quickly things. I keep on telling everyone, keep a log. Right. I started keeping my log with COVID. I actually had a log with Trump as well, but with COVID, it was just the pedal hit metal, because now there was no longer any resistance to their plans as the conservatives really capitulated, unfortunately. So, and that's across the board. So I would say that it's going to happen quicker than you could. Then all of this is happening quicker than a mind can comprehend. So while Joseph has already looked 10 years forward and then looking back, I'm looking at it in real time, and I think that under a Biden administration, you're going to see new committees created that are going to be kind of forensically going through every single artifact of history, every single written word, particularly those that have been digitized, and giving their kind of body of recommendations, and that includes social media. So I think I think they're going to destroy what people's nostalgia. I think people's recollection of America is going to be erased very, very forcefully, and that allows the megacorps to displace them, right? So I think in 20, 30 years, the history will be that America failed, and Amazon will be what takes over, and Amazon and the other tech companies are what take over, and the history books are going to record it differently than you might expect. But in order for the historians to write to kind of commence this, they need to wipe out what existed before. So it's an invading force. It's just it happens differently, and I would love to see what Chuck, who's on here as well, has to say about that, because he is brilliant. I read his blog all the time. So it's a sad state, but I think as all these books become digital, the book that I read is going to be different than the book that you read, because Google might contextually serve it up differently to you and me. And that's also one of the dangers, is that you and I will not realize that we're reading a different version of Mark Twain, right? Mine might have a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is, might have more content. I might have a premium plan, right? That therefore allows me to have certain words in it and certain phrases in it that I spend $100 a month on, while as you might only have the $30 plan, which means that you only get some of those words and phrases. But certainly we're seeing language completely dumbed down, and that's irreversible. You can't take hundreds of years of language, take it out, and then on a dime, reinsert it into the language. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting times. Keep a log. I'm telling you, keep a log. You're not understanding how quickly this is all moving, and that's regardless of whether Trump stays in office or whether it's Biden. Either way, this is what's going to happen. It's just, I think, Trump can help us defeat some of our enemies rather than. China is kind of an issue with me. A lot of people know that. So here somebody says, have you guys been following Ali Alexander? He's been incredible lately. I agree. And I see, down below it, there's somebody that says, he's a grifter, be careful. And I don't really know what a grifter and be careful mean, because, I've seen what people have said about him, and I don't know why it's really particularly relevant. I don't think people should, I don't think conservatives should be SJWing each other. I think that's a very dangerous thing. In order for a person to do what he's doing, to mobilize that much people, you have to have a very forceful personality, and sometimes that can get you in trouble. Maybe that's what's occurred to him in the past. I don't really know. It doesn't make a difference. In life, I think as adults, we all have to mark people to market, right? And I see what he's doing now, and I'm not going to kind of do a retrospective on his life. So here. And Joseph, you're kind of more of an expert on this type of stuff. But Mike Spoke, thank you so much for being here, says the last 30 years, the Catholic Church has redefined itself and aligning to non-traditional. Joseph?
Well, I'm a secular Jewish humanist, but I did go to Catholic school growing up, and I have been following this. I've been following religion and society, moreover, just because I find it fascinating from a sociological perspective. As far as the Roman Catholic Church goes, it has been taking a very hard left turn. Basically, now its establishment to the left on everything, with the exception of abortion and even homosexuality. Its doctrine is still very right wing, but it's not. The people aren't really interested in enforcing that anymore in the Vatican. I think the Roman Catholic Church is doing this for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's certainly reorienting itself from Europe and North America to the global South. But in the global South, a lot of people have very reactionary views on social policy. So even from that standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes some sense to emphasize economic leftism, because we're talking about poor people in the global South. But the social policy doesn't follow with that. I think that really what simply happened is that people who join the Catholic priesthood tend to be, and this is going to be blunt, they tend to be gay men who are self-loathing, and they become priests to begin with because they want to get away from who they are. And guys like that are not the most pro-traditionalist by nature, because in traditional society they're horribly discriminated against. But they go to the religion and they're predisposed to leftism because of who they are. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying it's what it is, and that's what's happening here. So there's also, there are other things too. If you look at people who are, I suppose, attracted to Roman Catholic lay organizations, they're increasingly leftist. I certainly saw that when I was in Catholic school. But that's a religion across the board in the U.S. There's nothing specifically Roman Catholic about that. I can tell you some interesting stories about the Southern Baptist Convention, about certainly the Episcopalians. And the Presbyterians too. I went to Presbyterian school growing up as well. It's interesting. This isn't a specifically Roman Catholic thing, but it is aligning itself to non-traditionalist Christianity in America on the whole, because it wants a younger demographic that it's losing badly, so it wants to be as relevant as possible to left-of-center social issues, and also wants to get more recent immigrants into the fray. And they're not necessarily to the left of social issues, but they're certainly to the left, generally speaking, on economic issues. And so you have this sort of two-step where these churches, and the Roman Catholic Church is no exception to it, are trying to get these younger native-born Americans who are socially leftist and these first-generation immigrants who are economically leftist. And it's a difficult balance to walk. But the Catholic Church specifically, I find interesting because it's losing so many members so quickly. I think now it's down to 17% of the U.S. population. The latest numbers, it was at 21% in 2015. So that's a big drop, in only 5 years. So it's a particularly, you could say, cruel for the Roman Catholic Church's interest case of losing so many people in such a short period. But I think it's actually just a more accelerated, exaggerated, if you will, version of what's happening with Christianity in America on the whole. Lots of older people dying off of leaving it, lots of younger people leaving it and never coming back. And the younger people who stay are to the left, as are the immigrants.
Joseph, that was wonderful. I'm going to give you a bell, right? I'm going to give you a speed round bell. So here's a really interesting question, and I'm so appreciative of Rising Serpent being here. And it's a really interesting question because I've never thought about this. And you're so right. I don't know the answer. So Rising Serpent says lots of room for disruption. Let me put this microphone. People were saying that they couldn't hear me that good. Here's my microphone. So lots of room for disruptors to emerge victorious in times of chaos. Where do you see opportunity? That's a brilliant question. It really is. I don't know. But you're right. There's no doubt that you're right that disruption and social upheaval allows for a lot of social and economic movement to happen with so much velocity, and it's a really good point. I mean, there's going to be some big social movement winners, some big economic movement winners from this, and I don't know, but you're definitely right, and even within political and social circles, there's definitely going to be somebody and some group that really becomes a force. It's a really interesting question. I got to think about that. I don't know. So again, I'm going to repeat the question for everybody. So Rising Serpent says lots of room for disruptors to emerge victorious in times of chaos. Where do you see opportunity? I would love to see other people answer that, including Joe. And so many people are joining us now. I'd love to see people's answers to that also because it's such an interesting question. Joe, the bell is on though. The bell is on. What do you think?
I think that probably the best places for people to find success in this time of chaos and the chaos that I believe is coming, it's in the details. How do people live their lives as productively and as in as stable a fashion as possible? If you find the answer to that in whichever area that you live, you can find a way to make money off of it and therefore have as good of a situation as possible for you. I would say that if you're looking to this is obviously the question about disruptors, but I'm just thinking about anyone there. For a disruptor, to I suppose turn that calamitous situation to his or her advantage, it would just be that person understanding what people want, what they're willing to, who they're willing to support in order to get what they want, and then being that person to the extent that you can be. I don't know that there's any other way of putting it, but so that's my take on this comprehensively speaking.
And I'd love to see other people's answers to that, and I'm going to ponder that. It's such an interesting question. I don't know. I've never thought about that, and I really appreciate you asking that because I don't know. So I'm just going to scroll through some others. And Raeli Biz, thank you so much for being here, says, is Paul Gottfried also being interviewed? We're definitely going to do that. And these aren't interviews, right? These are all just right now because it's dinner time. This is like a dinner chat, and we're just joined by friends. I really appreciate everybody here. It's not an interview, but we're definitely going to be doing a real good Periscope, like I did with Darren Beatty and Alan Bokhari. We're definitely going to do one with Paul because I get to first congratulate myself as I was right. And then I also get to mourn that I was right. So it's going to be interesting. And he's absolutely brilliant. And at this point, I think all of us need a lot of historical and philosophical context. And I've been reading and listening to a lot of audio, so both, been attacking it from both angles, is a lot of Plato, a lot of the Republic, a lot of Socrates, a lot of the philosophers, even again going back to Machiavelli, because we really need context, right? Because these battles have all been fought before. None of these battles are new. And we've got to find out how they were settled before, how they weren't, what worked, what didn't work. There's just so much these are age-old battles. These battles have been fought for thousands of years. And at this point, we really need some context. So I'm looking forward to Paul for that. Because neither one of us, most people can't ad lib the deepness of the philosophy and its history, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here, Flash 1340, thank you so much for being here. Says, what are some cities you think are resilient? Joseph.
Is any city resilient? That's a question to sort of, wide scale social change. I don't think there's any such thing as, a castle far, far away. But there are certainly some cities that I would say are better, one might say, dispositioned to face the future. I think that probably Dallas is one of them. So is Austin. They come to mind immediately. I don't think that places like Philadelphia, Baltimore, or even New York City, to be blunt. Atlanta is. Not that I particularly care for Atlanta, but it is in a good position, I think, for the future economically. And Miami as well. Yeah, definitely Miami. It's a very versatile city. It's called the city of the future in the 80s. And it still is that today. I don't think LA is at all. I don't think Seattle is.
Yeah, I'm going to ring the bell. Sure. Right? And I should really get a bell because I do this during the investor series a lot because I want to be so respectful of everyone's time, and we've definitely run over, and there's so many good questions here and comments. I really want to see them all. So what are some cities you think are resilient? None of them. I'm telling you right now. And hopefully everybody here follows John Robb. A lot of people might know John Robb. And hopefully a new name for everybody, which is Pezeski Charles, who's here, Connection Dr. Empathy. He goes, his Twitter is PEZESHKI Charles. And he writes a lot about this, but I think the answer to that is the left is going to chase you wherever you go. Mm-hmm. You're not gonna be able to escape them. And no matter where you go, no matter what enclave you find yourself in, they're gonna be there shortly, right? Mm-hmm. They're gonna pick up the suburban women. They're going to keep on using the George Floyd imagery, which was done very deliberately as kind of the sexualization type of thing. They're going to use that. They're going to keep on showing hardened criminals in tuxedos. After they've passed, they're going to give you holograms of them where you can pretend to be at a dinner with them, and they can present themselves elegantly. And it's going to be really bad. But this is all going to happen. This is all going to happen because you're going to be able to deep fake those people now. And also have an AI language for them where now they're going to be speaking very elegantly, and it's going to be a real problem. But the left is going to chase you wherever you go. You're not going to be able to escape them. So it's unfortunate that right now we're seeing so much intra-squabbles, including what I see with the conservative movement, because people are not, they've got to form a collective to fight both the megacorps, right? The left and the right have to join to fight the megacorps. To fight our corrupt politicians who are going to continue using inflammatory language and inflammatory politics so as to avoid having to confront their own electorate. It's going to get bad. There's no place you're going to be able to go that you're going to escape from this. You're not going to be able to find any church, any religious institution that's not going to have new altars set up. It's going to be bad, and it's going to happen very quickly because now you're going to have all the force of a profligate Biden Warren administration should they go in. You're going to have all the financial force of a very profligate Biden and Warren administration. So it's that money is going to be flowing down, man. Like the Persian kings would be envious. You have no idea. It's going to be brutal.
Romney will lap up quite a bit of it if Biden does win at HHS. I have no doubt about that.
I think I DM'd you that I'm an expert on that because of the companies I've been with. So they're a bunch of crooks. Department of Education, I can certainly speak of HHS and CMS, which is Medicare. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, Ayakundi. And I recognize the picture, so thank you very much. It says, what do you think of the lack of coverage of anti-lockdown protest in EU and Europe? When will they arrive here? Joseph, when do you think we're going to get kind of like an oppositional force to the lockdowns?
Well, obviously, the media is not covering the lockdowns because the media wants these lockdowns for the U.S. I think that it will. You won't see anything quite like what you see in some of these European countries here, unless it's a nationwide lockdown, which probably would not be upheld by the current ideological or philosophical state of the federal judiciary. But certainly in places like New York and California and Michigan, presuming the governor, she's about to be impeached, so we'll see if she stays in. But there you will see big protests. But the thing of it is that the U.S. has, I mean, it's a collection of states. So just because it's happening in one place doesn't mean it's going to be happening in the next place. And so it won't have the same impact on, say, the national consciousness that what you see in a European country would. So that's my take there. But no, I don't think that the coverage of these anti-lockdown protests from the EU will arrive here. And I don't think there will be a national protest to lockdowns as long as there isn't a national lockdown, which I just can't see. I'm not a lawyer, but even I can see that I don't think a national lockdown would be allowed by the current federal judiciary.
That's very interesting, and I look forward to Paul being responsive to that. And I know a lot of people here are from Europe. This is a little bit late for Europe, so that may not be the case, but in South America. So I'm very interested in what people's comments are here. Would be in Patrice, who's in Germany, would be very helpful with that. They've been DMing me a lot of stuff and very helpful to my log. I will say that I don't think that there's going to be any real reckoning in the U.S. with anti-lockdown protests, and that's because our population is different. We in some ways we have even a higher pain tolerance, considering that we have a much freer constitutional form. That I don't think we're going to see it. I think everybody right now, and I've written about this on Twitter a lot, is they're being forced to solve the trolley problem. So the entire world right now is battling it out for the solution to the trolley problem. So you not only have to solve the trolley problem, how many people am I willing to kill, right? As my runaway trolley rolls down the rails, but you then also have to explain it to the rest of the students in the class, and you have to reach a unanimous agreement that you've arrived at the solution to it. And everybody in America, and in fact in the world, is battling it out. And they're battling it out with, we can't withdraw forces from Syria because grandma, whoever, might get killed from it. And we've been trying to rescue grandma. I mean, come on, there's like 2 million Kurds in Syria or something. We can repopulate them in Greenland, right? We can repopulate them in Greenland. So it's just a total shit. But now again, everybody's engaged in a trolley problem with Syria, with Afghanistan. So this is a very deliberate thing. The elites are doing this very deliberately. And I don't think we're going to see any real organized protest against it here. Also because Antifa will not tolerate it. They'll bonk you on the head. And it's going to be getting, I think, more violent. So, and I'm going to be having a discussion with Jack Posobiec soon, which I'm really excited about because he infiltrated Antifa. And also, I think post-millennial. So I'll have a conversation with Andy when he gets a chance. So Kim, thank you so much for being here. Says, if no republic, then how does U.S. Then what is, I would suppose, I'll reframe your question a little bit. But if no republic within America, then how does the United States manage itself in the global political environment?
Is that for me or for you?
I think that's going to be a tough question for both of us because I've discussed this within the investor series, and I know, Kim, that you've been there. So, Joseph, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I think that we wouldn't even be thinking about how the U.S. would position itself in the global political environment. The question would be, how does the former United States, under whoever's control it's under, position itself there? And I say under whoever's control it's under because I don't think you're going to see 50 independent countries coming out of the U.S. in the event that the U.S. no longer exists. I think the most states are going to be controlled by somewhere else. Maybe Texas would go it alone, but that would be, a unique thing. Even in Florida, where I am, it would have to be, I think, probably a series of British bailiwicks or crown dependencies, whatever. So I think the question would be, well, how does where I am fit into the global political and financial environment as well? I don't think you can really separate the two. So yeah, I don't think necessarily what happens in Miami would have much relevance to what happens in New York in that circumstance. I mean, obviously they're all part of the global financial system, but politically, I don't think it really would. It would be very interesting. It would be sort of like comparing events in Argentina and Venezuela.
Very interesting. And I discussed this in the investor series. I think it is interesting. I think the world is being cartelized. I think there's a very interesting time in history, and I think people really have to keep notes of it because it's changing so quickly. And part of that's the investor series, so we can figure out how to invest, so we can be on the right side of history, so to speak. But you also have to keep a log because I'm not sure if people can really comprehend the way things are going to look going forward. But the world is being cartelized, and we're losing territorial sovereignty, and it's becoming functional sovereignty. So I'm not sure what the U.S. after a Biden administration is really going to look like. I think it's going to be various states of Amazon and Walmart battling it out, and it's going to be interesting. So Generator 16, thank you so much for being here, and I know them offline as well. So regionalism makes sense, except I still have two popes. And I'm going to respond to that first, and I'm going to give it to you, Joseph. Regionalism, I'm not a fan of regionalism. I know Michael Krieger and I and some other people are going to have conversations about this going forward. But as I'm kind of a specialist on certain things within China, I see the failures of regional. I think it creates tremendous corruption. I think you're going to find not only does it create the opportunity for tremendous corruption, but also those cities and states are going to be competing with each other in a way that America has never seen before, um, in a way that exists in China, which is can be very, very bad. And I'd have to go into that in a different day. But also, when you have regionalism, not only do you encourage the corruption that happens, right? But also, as has happened in China, truth is very hard to find in a regional system. In a very defragmented system, what you had in China was truth is very hard to find, and it requires tremendous effort. And in that way, I definitely can see what the Chinese Communist Party and Z have had to endure because they have regional spills. They have industrial spills, explosions all the time, river dumps, thousands of people die, and the local governments don't even report it. So, the Chinese Communist Party officials at the top, the small group, don't find out about it until the damage is done. And then they just keep denying it. So you got a real problem because once you've missed that window of the first 24, 48 hours, you're now in a position where you have to keep on denying, and then you're going to have regional systems that are basically one party, as you're going to see in San Francisco, as you're seeing in Detroit, and when you have one party, you're almost kind of stuck with it forever because taking it out causes too much political and economic disruption.
Uh, Something, a few things to go into here. I think regionalism is the way of the future, whether we like it or not. I am more of a regionalist, much more than Adam is, but I will say that every negative criticism, oh, obviously, every criticism is negative, of regionalism that he brought up is true. There's no counterpoint to it. It is correct. He's vast. He knows infinitely more about China than I do, but what relatively little I do know about it, of course, is what he just said about how it's run. So I have no counterpoint to any of that. I think regionalism is the way of the future simply because it's harder to keep people together in big groups now with people being able to more or less lead lives devoid of any larger society, thanks to more than anything else, the rise of information technology. Now, looking at what another thing Adam brought, very important about what happens with one party rule, how it becomes intractable after a point. That's correct. It's true even in places that you would think are very competitive, like Florida, where I am. The Republican Party, and it runs the state very well. I vote for it, and I'll continue voting for it. But it has had one party rule here in Florida since the 90s. And even though Florida has a relatively evenly divided electorate, what we find is that the Republican Party here overwhelmingly dominates the state legislature, by now the state courts. So this isn't a place, that has a swing voter base. So it has built itself up in 2 decades, and it'd be almost impossible now for the state Democrats to extract it, even if they win a gubernatorial election, which is very doubtful going forward. Even with the big base they have here, it becomes really almost impossible to get rid of one party rule once it's been around for a while. So you have to hope that the one party rule is successful. Now, if you talk about a place like California, which has one party rule and an overwhelmingly slanted electorate, Democratic electorate, then that's the way it's going to be, and you're stuck with it. So it's just interesting on that note about one party rule.
It is interesting, and I think in our political system, one party rule is codified with a tremendous amount of violence. So I think you're seeing one-party rule in Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, now San Francisco. And the way to preserve one-party rule is different than you would have in China or in other countries. So I don't know. I mean, I think you got to be wary of it, particularly as things are defunding the police, because those small regionals that I have more suspicions of them, because I think they're as they're defunded, you're going to see a lot of John McCain's and Hillary Clinton's running lord-like fiefdoms. And those regionals are not going to be. You imagine Voltaire and some guy kind of tilling his land. I think you're going to have a Hillary Clinton. He came, he saw. We came, we saw, we killed him. Whatever she said. So Chaz, that thing that happened is kind of good. So it was interesting to observe. So Rising Serpent says it's getting real hard to tell the difference between big corporate and big government.
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily much of a difference, and I think in the future you'll see at the local level in cities some big companies bailing out these cities that are having failing economies, which is going to be exacerbated with COVID, obviously, and they will take that opportunity to more or less turn these cities into a wing of themselves. And obviously the people who, the average Jack or Jill is not going to be having a seat at the board of the company. So it's going to be interesting how that goes. I think that in some places, the bridge which is already very narrow, between big government and big business, it's going to be non-existent. So yeah, I really do expect to see the private equity firms taking over certain municipalities, sort of like as a test run for the next 10 years. And who knows where it'll go after that.
Yeah. Let me get back to this. I was doing something else. It's interesting. It's getting real hard to tell. And again, Rising Serpent says it's getting real hard to tell the difference between big corporate and big government. And a lot of that, I think, is because government has failed its electorate so much that I think of Roman history a lot. And I think that our politicians have retreated to Ravenna, and they're very happy to let Alaric open up the gates and pillage Rome. So they've retreated, and I've thought about this for years. This is nothing new. I mean, I've been watching this now for about 10 years, and because I know a lot of politicians, I funded a lot of politicians. I know these people personally, it's interesting. So I think that they've all kind of retreated, and in the retreat, there's a vacuum because people see Google, they see these companies, and those companies are much more responsive to their consumers. They're immediately responsive in a world where people expect politics to be Uberized. Yes. They have very little patience or pain tolerance, and political systems are designed to be very, very slow and very methodical and very dotted I's and T's crossed. And people don't have the patience for that anymore, nor do they have an appetite for a government that works that way, which is so corporations have been able to fill in that vacuum because people go into the Apple store and they say, why can't my government experience be like this? And in their minds, they would rather have Apple stock than the U.S. currency, which is what Bitcoin is all about. And in their mind is really given a choice between the terms of service and the Constitution. They have more confidence clearly in the terms of service. And again, Chuck and John write about this a lot more, and a lot of people have written about this much better than I have. So I've just read everybody else's and then synthesized it with my own kind of view. And I'm not in any way pessimistic. I think the future is a really exciting place, but I just think it's different. And one of the things I don't have is I don't have a lot of nostalgia. I'm not looking back that much because I'm trying to live in this moment and just have an awareness of what's happening right now. So Rising Serpent, because there isn't so I wanna No Worries 2020 says, would love to hear some thoughts on a journalism profession. Seems important. Joseph, what do you think? You do a lot more journalism than I do.
It's really not so much of a profession, I would call it today. I think what it is that a lot of these papers have become over the last several years, and it's something that started, then it goes back longer than that, but it's accelerated over the last several years. They've become rapidly partisan. And so it's really more like party agitprop, newsletters, propaganda at this point. So that's the way things are headed with so-called journalism. To the extent you can call it a profession, it's just really the game of who can say the most appealing slogans as quickly as possible, as rapidly as possible within a certain period of time, and who is going to get his or her troops, so to speak, out to vote on the basis of all this stuff, or who's going to get his or her troops to comply with a certain political directive at any given point in time. That's what I think of journalism now, really.
And I'll defer to everybody else because we've all given this a lot of thought, and I don't think I'd be able to contribute anything. I mean, I don't think there's ever. I think people ask me because I'm writing the history of this, like Thucydides, and and people ask, and I know, my mentor co-founded CNN. A lot of people know that, with Ted, and then he founded the Food Network. And my cousin's a journalist. Journalism is very important to me. I don't think journalism exists anymore, and I don't think historians will ever write about what we're experiencing now. I look at the journalists who are writing now about COVID and some other things, and many of them are friends of mine. And the problem is that they're very smart people, but they have a very horizontal intelligence. And it's a very dangerous thing because you see people today, and Joseph is young himself, very wise, but people today have never worked in a big corporate environment. So they've never seen the complexities, the intricacies of working in a large corporate environment and how kind of the organism exists. So they're never going to be able to write a history that's significant because they're little pawns on an assembly line, and all they're doing is something's coming to their station, they stamp it, and then they shove it along. And they have no awareness of how that product arrived at their station or what happens to it once it's gone. And some journalists will stamp it this way, and another journalist might stamp it another way. But either way, they don't have a system view. So I don't think there's going to be much of an opportunity for journalism, particularly as we're losing language. And journalism requires kind of a precision in language, right? Otherwise, everything's going to be Jack and Jilled. So here's something very interesting. So just a human person says, looks like Right Side Broadcasting got hacked on Parler. I'm not on Parler. I think I'm on Parler. I'm not really on Parler though. I think Parler is a place where Twitter and Facebook are letting everybody escape to, and then they're going to close that door. They're going to close that door, man. I just told this to some friends of mine who are kind of big within. They're going to close that door. I would not go there, and don't respond to any people there because I think you're seeing a lot of inauthentic activity there, and it's going to be ugly. I'm not a big fan of it. I like it. I see Cernovich and some other real influencers are there, and Posabig and some other people are there, and I don't see them interacting because I think they also understand the dangers of it, but I think they also want to contribute to improving the virality of it and improving kind of the engagement that's on it. I think everyone's kind of cautious of it. So we need to stop misinformation. We certainly do, somebody says. So I want to make sure I haven't neglected anything because there's so many interesting things here. And Generator 16 says, Adam, you are far too grim in assessing this moment, sir. I'm not grim at all. No way. I love it. I am not pessimistic about the future in any way whatsoever. I'm so excited about Space Force. I think people who are hungry are going to do incredibly well. I just think the world is transforming. Our people operating system is transforming. And although that leads to a tremendous amount of instability, but I think very quickly those things settle themselves. So I think Biden had to win, and I told this to other people before. I wasn't particularly enthused about it, but because now the megacorps need to codify their rule. So now that the Biden's in, they're going to codify the rule, and then I think we're going to be able to see what it looks like on the other side. And so I think 1 or 2 more years of a little bit of social unpleasantness, and then I think we're going to be able to see what it looks like on the other side. But for those people who want a quality education, they're not going to have any difficulty acquiring it. It's just not going to be as readily available as it once was because a lot of us who are in our 40s and 50s grew up with books all over the house, right? We would read them in the bathroom. Our parents would leave those books everywhere to make sure that we found them. And our grandmothers would say, read it in a dictionary. So now those dictionaries are digital, and it allows for the real degradation of language. So if people are interested in acquiring a real education, they're not going to have any difficulty if they aggressively pursue it. So hopefully I don't come across grim. I'm not. I'm pissed, but I'm not grim. Um, so um, again, thank you for so much for being here, Aya Kundi. She says conservatives still are too weak to reform Section 230. I think Will Chamberlain and I at some point, and Ron Coleman and I are going to do another Periscope. I know that was very popular, and we're going to follow up with Will Chamberlain because he's an expert on 230, and I think Robert Barnes is also. So here, John Barr, O2, a bunch of numbers says rise and resist. Folks, it's just an election. Geez, what's with all the fear mongering? I agree. I'm not fear mongering. I'm just saying things are changing. I'm not fear mongering. I mean, if if uh if everybody's here seen my investor series, there's no fear mongering within it whatsoever. We're talking about what the future is going to look like and how we're going to profit from it. Um, that's all. Joseph, what do you think?
Well, as some people say, what's the old saying? If voting really made a difference, they wouldn't let you do it. I obviously don't think that's true because you see voter fraud designed to allay the will of the public. So voting does make a difference, and elections do make a difference. If Biden wins or Trump wins, there are going to be different policies promoted. They're going to affect people in different ways, whether it has to do with taxation or whether it has to do with whether or not a project goes up near your house that will kill the property values in the area. There are consequences to elections. And I know everyone's talking about the presidential election, but here in Florida, we had a very progressive Supreme Court that was a holdover of the Democratic dominance until the 90s. And the fellow, Ron DeSantis, who got elected, he appointed 3 new justices, and now the court is the most conservative in the country. And I've seen myself the rulings that's been issuing over the last several months. Big difference, and it makes a difference in people's lives as the result of an election. So elections do have consequences, whether they're good consequences or bad consequences. And fear mongering is not good. That I don't track it, and I agree that there's no point in that because if something's going to be bad, you just have to deal with it and find a way to make the situation as advantageous as possible for you. Fear monger, it's not going to do that. But elections do have consequences, and people have to acknowledge that if they want to have a really, I think, accurate perception of where the country is going or where their city or state is going.
I agree, but elections also create opportunity. So
Sure.
one of the things that what Rising Serpent did say within, and I really want to think about it because it's so profound. But certainly it also creates opportunities, right? It's just I try not to be too nostalgic, but it's hard not to see right now what's going on because we're really seeing kind of it's so belligerent that the elites did not have to be this cruel, right? I think they wanted to seize everything, they fastest roll up of power, and I'm kind of chronicling it. Alan Bukhari is writing about it in social media. Jack Posobiec is infiltrated Antifa, and a lot of other people have done some really interesting things. But I think that the megacorps didn't need to be so cruel. They didn't need to destroy so much black wealth, so much minority wealth. I think that was unnecessary. I think there was a vindictiveness to that. So I don't know. It's upsetting, and I've spoken to a lot of heads of intel and a lot of different agencies around the world because that's kind of what I do. And I think we're all in agreement that the elites didn't have to be this cruel. It's causing a lot of suffering. So Chuck says old physical books. Pizonis, thank you so much for being here. Says old physical books are the only link to history. Yes, and only the elites will have them. And that's a very interesting thing that only the elites will be able to have them. So when I see the statues being torn down, I know that they're being delivered to Jeff Bezos' house, and that's an upsetting thing. And we're not seeing enough plebs mediating the damage that that's going to cause. So SK098, thank you so much for being here. What are the chances that AI writes to erase information in real time and become uncomfortable? 100%. They're going to be serving news after they fire all these journalists because they're unneeded now. They're going to be serving up news contextually. So the news that I read in the New York Times is now going to become different than the news that you read in the New York Times. And you're not going to be able to distinguish the two because we're not going to be speaking, right? So we're not going to be doing, an examination of each of them. And some of the differences are going to be kind of imperceptible, but significant. So they're going to be serving up news contextually in a way much more profound than they're exaggerated than they're doing right now. And all those books that you have online at Google are going to go through committees. and they're going to start redacting things, and it's going to look like bad FOIA findings. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, but I don't think that I think if people can prepare for it and act with intelligence and responsiveness, I think the future is going to be really, really good. I think Space Force, lots of new industries, millions of new jobs. I just think we all have an obligation to make sure that our children get those jobs, and that requires more effort than being able to drop them off at school. So we're going to go medieval with making sure our kids get an education. So I'm going to scroll through this really, really quickly. Language has been dumbed down. Toy Biederman says language has been dumbed down for decades. Just look at some old magazines compared to modern ones. Perhaps, but there were still places there were still journals and journalists and books that had preserved very high fidelity, and I think we're losing that en masse. So let me just make sure I got everything, because a lot of people are here. So I think I want to make sure. J Love 88 says my church has a huge library. Every church should. So we're going to close it up, but I want to make sure. And Fizz Fick EJ Ezel says, I worry this is coming for STEM too. Too much information and progress will be lost. Yeah. I think
they are STEM, no question. I've seen that. I don't mean to barge in, but I've seen that myself. I was hearing from professors in STEM this year. The STEM is getting wokeified, if you will. They're talking about now having committees to make science more relatable to purportedly disadvantaged groups, which means you have to dumb it down and to change, scientific outcomes to reflect political imperatives. Certainly, they are coming for STEM because they see it as a form of European and Asian imperialism somehow, and specifically something that's dominated by white and Asian men and that's thought of as being unacceptable.
Hopefully, Fizz, Fike EJSL, you'll join us when Paul Gottfried comments, because then again, that's where we need philosophy, and that's where we need some kind of historical context, because that is not the Renaissance and Enlightenment these are crucial things to look at, and there's just so much philosophy. So STEM is as odd as it is really nothing new, right? So and how education, there's just so much interesting. So I really want a broader conversation, because that's so interesting to me. And I think we're going to find some questions and then close up. So Jedi Mac 3 says, I'm hungry to succeed, thinking economics or analytics. They're both going to be good. I'll tell you what I think is going to be the secret to succeeding going forward. I think people, because of the hyper competitive job markets that we're seeing now and going to continue to see, is people are going to need mentorship, that they're going to need to very actively seek out mentorship, because I think we're going to go into a type of caste system where there's W-2 people, which are kind of the new DC nobles, right? And then there's going to be the contractors that are living kind of what is that saying, like foot to mouth or whatever that saying is. They're kind of catching up. Yeah. So I think they're going to be living with a lot of financial instability and not have a lot of predictability to their revenue or to their earnings. So I think to avoid that and to become kind of one of the Amazon nobles, right? Because, why not? Then I think you're going to need to actively pursue mentorship in some of the biggest companies. So Boeing, everyone knows I'm very enthusiastic about Boeing. There's just so many great companies that are out there, and I would be beating down their doors, just making a really good impression, speaking very elegantly, speaking very disciplined with a lot of self-awareness. And one of the things that kids today lack is an appreciation of a rigid hierarchy. I think people have to understand, if you're working in a corporation, you've got a boss. Your boss doesn't really, even though they might say it, they don't really care about woke, because they're going to be threatened by woke, because they're going to see their own vulnerability to it. So have a lot of self-awareness, and present yourself really well, because mentors are always looking for mentees, and they're always looking outside of their own social circles and career circles for mentees. There's a lot of reasons for that. And, let them find you and let you find them, right? So, but I think it's going to need to be done very aggressively, almost like a hunting expedition. and there's going to be a scarcity of them. But it's the only way you're going to be able to break into kind of the DC Noble, the Amazon Nobles. So I would say very aggressively and tactfully pursue mentorship, get a fantastic education, speak speak with all the flourish of language, right? So I don't think it's going to be that difficult. I think Space Force is going to create so many. I just think there's, I'm not bearish. I just think things are changing. But and I wish our elites weren't so didn't have so much cruelty, because I think it was unnecessary. So I want to make sure. Yes, and I recognize your picture. So thank you so much for being here, Ferenzos. Thank you so much for being here. And she writes, wokeness is infecting our defense contractors. I'll respond to that. And I apologize for Joseph that I'm putting you in a position where you're just watching me respond to these things. So I would say, and I know we've discussed this offline, I would say it is, but that's very temporary. You're going to see kind of the squashing of woke very soon within those companies, because it's not sustainable. Because those companies don't want to have the headline risk, the litigation risk. They certainly don't want to expose themselves to the headline risk. It's one of the reasons that you're going to see a lot of them becoming pushing off to 1099s, because they don't want to have those. They don't want to have W-2 employees that expose them to that type of headline risk and legislative risk. So I think that's going to resolve itself. I think there's going to be a purge. I think it's going to be coming very, very soon within the defense industry. So I'm not that bearish. I think Biden might create some new complications, though. I think Biden will be a little bit adversarial to the. I think he might introduce some kind of unfortunate legislation that does create problems. So I just want to make sure. And Joseph, as I'm scrolling through things, feel free to give a monologue on Cotto Gottfried, because I'm such a fan of you guys, and I watch you guys. I watch you guys thing all the time, and really good long form interviews.
Thank you very much, Adam. And people can find the show just by going to Google and typing in Cotto Gottfried, and YouTube should be what comes up first. It's on other platforms, but do go to the YouTube page and subscribe. Please look through our videos, and if you like them, consider sharing them. It is a long form interview show, and we do address topics pretty thoroughly. And Paul and I really do enjoy talking to each other. Some are just episodes where we talk with each other, others are interviews. So it's really a unique program, the likes of which you don't see very much today, dare I say. Paul is a paleo conservative, which is a traditionalist conservative. I am a Rockefeller Republican. I've never been affiliated with the conservative movement, but my views are all over the place. They generally pull toward the right. But today things are so, polarized that anyone who's not on the woke train 100% is thought of as a dangerous, fascist, whatever, even if you are a strong opponent of fascism as I am. So it's interesting how the whole thing works. But so Cotto Godfrey, yeah, please check it out. Please subscribe, and I hope to see some people watching that whenever they have free time. Adam has been on the show. He will be on again. Lots of stuff to discuss, as always. I would really like to chat with him, as a matter of fact, on the show about Space Force, which I think would be a great episode in and of itself.
Yeah, and I'm going to close up with just a question here that there was something. Actually, I'm going to do a few things. So Green Shoot 5 says, Adam, classic boomer advice, give your manager a firm handshake. LMAO. It's funny that you say classic boomer advice, as though we're living in different times, and you're the one that's living in a different time. My time is still doing really well. My people are not having the turbulence that the younger generations have created upon themselves, because the younger generations were astroturfed, were engaged in all these astroturfing that implemented Obamacare, and the destruction of what occurred with Obamacare is kind of the chasm that allowed companies to jump that chasm into 1099s en masse and to dump retirees and this. So I'm not a I think boomer is boomer advice, and people who say boomer like postcards, and I don't mean to say that nasty, but I know some young kids that are kicking ass, and they're just as much me as I was me 30 years ago. So I just want to make sure that I saw. Oh, I'm going to close with this. Oh, hold on a second. This one pissed me off. Bike Spoke says Boeing lost its focus. No, you're absolutely wrong. And I'm going to respond to this one really quickly because Boeing didn't. What's happening is, and I know the defense industry pretty well, so I'm going to give you speculation, right? Is that just as you had shorts pounding down, planting bullshit stories about Tesla for the last 5 years and trying to drive the price of the stock down, you're having a lot of, in the defense industry, it's like that times 10, because you're having a lot of other companies that are competing for multi-billion-dollar plane contracts that are planting bearish stories in American newspapers. So you're not just seeing fake news about Trump or Biden or Hunter or whatever it is. You're not just seeing fake news about that. I've been seeing fake news for 30 years in the stock market with people planting bullshit articles and finding journalists that were going to publish their bullshit articles. I mean, I saw a lot of people who were willing to take under the table money from people who were short Tesla and planting what I knew were lies, and I know who the journalists are, and I even know who was bribing them. So yeah, it is what it is. So we're going to close up on this, right? And we were only going to go a half an hour.
Great.
Yeah, so we're going to close up on this. Thank you, everybody, so much for your time. I'm very, very, very bullish. I'm very pro-America. Never short America. Never, ever, ever short America. And that's what the Investor Series and everything else is about. And everyone knows how I feel about that. Never, ever short America. I think we're going through changes. And I think very soon we're going to have a lot more certainty about what's on the other side, and then we can negotiate with it. But in that interim period, we can't lose our awareness of ourselves and our awareness that there is a future, and just keep on investing in everything. So no, I'm really bullish. America's going to win. America's going to look a little bit different because America's going to be Amazon and Microsoft and Google, but it's still going to be America. It's just going to be a different sovereignty. But we're going to win, man. We always win. It's in our blood. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for kind of this dinner. And Jedi Max says, thank you so much, Adam, Scrabble, and Cotto Gottfried. And thank you so much, Joseph. Can you say the name of where people can find you on YouTube again?
Certainly. Just go to YouTube and type in COTTO space GOTTFRIED, and the channel should pop right up. Subscribe to it. And of course, you can find us on Twitter too. Just go to Twitter and type in Cotto Gottfried. But yeah, subscribing on YouTube is really the biggest thing. It's greatly appreciated. Oh, and Jedi Mac also asked what my favorite kind of music is. I like soft rock music and some instrumental music. And some jazz is pretty good too. I could go to different genres of music, but those are my big three that I just mentioned.
Okay. Well, let's not make this one of those Kamala Harris CNN softball interviews, right? So
I just figured out answer.
But I appreciate it. Next, you're going to say, who's that person? She said, like Kim B or whatever that person's name is. I don't know these music people's names, but in any event. So thank you very much. And we're going to close with that, Jedi Max. So again, they say, thanks so much, Adam Scrabble and Cotto Gottfried. And thank you so much for joining us on really short notice to everybody. And this is kind of like our dinner, everybody. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. It was kind of fun, right? And Joseph, I want to thank you also, because this was spur of the moment. I said, let's do this. It'll be fun. And it was fun. So I'm going to close up. And again, thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Joseph, stay with me when I press the button. Everybody else, it's goodbye. So thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.